Stuart Clark, welcome to CamTalks.
Hi Cam, thank you for having me on.
Thank you very much for being on. Stuart, this is a long time coming.
It is, we have talked about this for a while, yeah.
Well, I think that's because we're the generation that love podcasts, right?
Yep.
We like long form interviews
Yep.
and listening to them. It's funny because a lot of my guests so far don't even know what a podcast is.
Oh, really? I mean, I listen to probably 20 hours of podcasts a week, so
it's amazing,
yeah, I love
isn't
it? They're these days, you get a more insightful look into what's going on in the world than watching sort of legacy media, in my view.
Well, I can't wait to talk about legacy media. We're gonna get into it. There is something about like being unfiltered, and and it's also, I mean, for me, I always feel like the older generation can sometimes be a bit lazy with their opinions. It's like, now you can go and double check these things and listen to the horse.
Plug it into ChatGPT and see what comes out.
Oh my god, we do have an island of AI natives now. It's scary seeing my mum using ChatGPT.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got us using it in government. So
there you go. We're getting there. Progress is coming.
Yep.
Stuart, why don't you just start by telling me a little bit about your story of Alderney, because obviously this is how we've met. Where did it all begin for you?
I mean, I've been coming to Alderney since I was born, 1979, probably 1980 by the time I first came here with my mum and dad. My mum's parents came over here on a boat in the early 60s, a friend's yacht. They stayed for about a week, and by the end of the week, they bought a house up on the high street, absolutely ruined. The house had been occupied by the Germans during the war. The roof had been burnt for fuel after D-Day, so they rebuilt it. And they used to. My grandfather was headmaster of a prep school, so he used to bring out groups of school kids out to Alderney every summer. Everyone, pretty much of my generation, who went through Street Court, the prep school, came out here at some point on a trip, exploring all the bunkers and forts. And so yeah, lots of people look back very fondly on that. And then when my grandfather retired in the late 80s, they moved over here full time and then got very stuck into Alderney life.
We know. Yeah.
I've been coming over every year. Missed a few when I was in the military. Worked here, worked in the first and last for many years.
No, you didn't.
Waiting tables.
Under
Rita, yeah, legend.
Wow.
And generally, yeah, it was a great place to spend the summer holidays as a teenager and student.
How bizarre! How bizarre that we've all managed to find our way onto a 3 by 1.5 mile rock.
Well, it's a pretty special place, and I, 5-6 years ago when I was living in London, didn't really. Just got fed up with living in a city. So where should I go? And it was a choice between moving to somewhere with mountains or moving to Alderney. And in the end, I went, no, I love it at Alderney, and bought a house here and moved here full time.
Well, I'm so grateful you did. Really am. It's amazing because growing up, I mean, you're a little bit older than me, but you're of my cousin's generation, and so I think actually, so my cousin was one of the worst influences on my life when it comes to drinking. I think I must have been about 14 when Abby fed me Pimm's at the quarry party.
That's standard Alderney starting age, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
I think we were about 15 when we were regulars in Nellie Gray's garden, and probably 16 at the Bellevue.
I love it though, because there is this like generational. I mean, it kind of feels like a big holiday camp here, but like you see the same sort of faces. But no, growing up when I was about 16, 17, I'd already been in the army cadets, and I was really obsessed with the military.
Oh, I remember being asked, "Oh, Cam's quite keen to join the army. Have you got any?"
And I got to pick your brains, and it really did inspire me, and so.
But you didn't join.
Yes, I mean some people are just not cut out for the military, and I'm certainly one of them. But where did your military life start? Because I mean, genuinely, it's a long path to becoming an officer, and then it's an even further path to becoming a helicopter pilot. Why the hell did you do that?
Well, I suppose I was kind of interested in joining the military. When you were, I suppose, sixth form at school, when you have the careers fairs and things, and it was always an option. It was my grandfather had been in the Royal Engineers. One of my uncles was in the cavalry, and he spent his entire career driving tanks around Germany and skiing. And I thought, oh, that's pretty cool, getting paid to go skiing. So yeah, it was an option. I then went to university, went to Bristol and studied economics. Had no intention of joining the military for about the first 2 years of that. And then towards the end of it, I just thought, do you know what, I really don't want to go into the city. I'd studied economics because I'm interested in it. Did a lot of politics modules in that as well. And just thought, you know, sitting in an office during my 20s is not for me. What other options are there? And a friend's uncle was in the Army Air Corps. And I met him a few years before, and I thought, you know what, that'd be quite a cool job. So I applied, and they basically got me in interviews, and then put me through the selection procedure. So this is before I'd finished university. And you go and do medicals, you do aptitude tests, sort of, you know, rubbing your stomach and patting your head type stuff, but on gizmos. And then you go and do 13 hours of fixed wing flying lessons at Middle Wallop. So Middle Wallop in Hampshire, middle of Salisbury Plain. It's the headquarters of the Army Air Corps. Did it's a 2-week thing where you go up and have lessons, and they basically say to you, look, anyone can learn to fly. We can teach anyone to fly. It's like driving a car. But what we're looking for is someone who picks it up relatively quickly, and somehow passed it. I think my RAF instructor there said, yeah, Stuart isn't the most natural pilot, but he'll make a good army pilot.
That's hilarious. What did it feel like the first time you were really, like, I don't know, flying? Like,
well, we didn't go solo on any of those flights, so you're always with an instructor. So I loved it, and it was quite a weird experience, because whilst I was at Middle Wallop, 9/11 happened.
oh wow!
So yeah, so we got back from the flying. I walked into the mess, and everyone was crammed down in the TV room. So I went down there just as the first tower collapsed, and everyone was just glued to that TV for the next 3 or 4 hours, and definitely had an influence on my military career, where I ended up. And after university, I took a year out, went out to this. Well, I worked for 6 months in the UK to pay for it, and then went out to the States, did a ski instructor's course, and then a bit of backpacking around the States, and then went to Sandhurst for a year. So I was 23, I think, when I joined. Hated Sandhurst. I'm not very good without sleep. My brain doesn't function unless I'm well rested, and Sandhurst is a whole year of 4 hours sleep a night, or 5 hours. It's just, so I wasn't a high performer at Sandhurst, but I got through it, having been sponsored by the Army Air Corps, and got commissioned and got in. Thankfully.
Wow, what was that like in your passing out parade at Sandhurst?
Yeah, it was great. My grandparents came. I think they were very proud. My parents were there. We had spent a lot of time practicing the drill. So I had when in the platoon you're in at Sandhurst, you have a captain who's your platoon commander. So I had a Navy officer for my first term, and then we had a Royal Marine for the second 2 terms. So we got quite a weird view of officership in the military from them. But we were very lucky. We had colour sergeant attached, coaching us throughout. One was a para, who was a guy called Kurt Vines, who was amazing, and then another guy called Vern Stokes, who was a colour sergeant in the Coldstream Guards. And he now, if you were to watch the most recent Trooping the Colour or any of the ceremonial stuff, he's the top sergeant major in the army, and he's a massive, great guy who is in charge of those parades up in London. So he's gone and done very well, and fully deserved. He was quite he was a great influence on us all, I think.
It's incredible, because obviously Sandhurst is where we send our officers to get commissioned, and you do work with the best of the army and clearly the Navy, and
they always have. They don't have many Navy and Marines there, but they'll have 1 or 2 as a sort of exchange officer.
So obviously in the army you've got officers and NCOs, is that right?
Yeah,
and privates.
Just different career structures. So as an you can join as a private, young soldier, and then you become a lance corporal, sergeant, colour or staff sergeant, sergeant major, and you go up. Once you've done your 24 years, you can then potentially commission to be an officer after that.
And you skip a couple of
you go in as a captain, and in the Army Air Corps, we we work a lot with ground soldiers, but none of us have actually done much in the way of infantry stuff. So we would often commission career infantry NCOs, commission them as captain, and they would come in, be part of our officer force, I suppose, and give us a lot of insight into like the what we're dealing with when we're going and picking people up, or what. So
the army's got this amazing structure to it. I mean, how would you describe that kind of organisation?
Quite hierarchical, I suppose. But, yeah, I mean, it's it's a very formal structure. And it depends what regiments you're in, and in a helicopter, you have a much more relaxed relationship with the NCOs. Like the corporal in the back who was manning the door gun. It wasn't quite as strict with sirs and no sir, yes sir, as in probably an infantry regiment where it's very strict and hierarchical. There's a thing called crew resource management where they've studied aircraft accidents and crashes, and when one of the crew doesn't feel like they can speak up, or if they're being overridden by an overbearing pilot or captain of the aircraft, often contributes to things being missed and accidents happening. So we had a much more relaxed sort of relationship with the soldiers we work with. Not as much as the RAF, who are very first name terms.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. Because I mean, I think a lot of people would find it a surprise to know that the Army Air Corps is the helicopters and the RAF are the planes. Is that right?
No. No, both have all three services
difference?
have helicopters. So going through my flying training, it's probably easiest to talk through after Sandhurst. Well, after Sandhurst, I went off did a 4-month attachment to the Royal Irish in Fermanagh. It was peaceful, but there was still a few which we call local farming families who were causing a bit of trouble, and we had to keep an eye on. But yeah, it was straight into out patrolling around the roads and the woods and the lakes in the middle of winter for 4 months. It was grim, but
So this was like you're attached to an infantry regiment?
So for an Army Air Corps officer, you, having finished Sandhurst, you then go into a flying training system that can last 18 months or 2 years. So they will try and get you on an attachment before you do that, so you actually get some real life army experience. You get to see what really goes on, and yeah, my attachment was in Northern Ireland, and it was a good experience. I was sort of a young second lieutenant. Based in two little border outposts called Balik and Belcoo, and there was a sergeant who ran the place, and he was basically in charge, and I was there kind of just learning what they were doing and getting a taste for it, I suppose. And then following that, went into the flying training system, which did last about best part of 2 years, I suppose. And then you end up training with RAF and Navy. So all three services have helicopter pilots. Initially, we went up to RAF Barkston Heath, which is right next to RAF Cranwell, their main training centre, their equivalent of Sandhurst, I suppose. And that you do 40 hours of fixed wing flying in a little 2-seater aeroplane, a little stunt plane. And essentially the reason for that is it's bloody expensive to run a helicopter. Even like a basic one is many hundreds of pounds an hour, if not thousands of pounds an hour. Whereas a little 2-seater plane at the time, so this is 2004-05, a little plane was about 250 quid an hour to run, whereas the Squirrel, which was the first helicopter we learnt on, I think was about 800 pounds an hour. So you get 40 hours or so of flying where you learn the rules of the air, sort of airfield regulations, procedures, using radios, talking to a couple of different radios at the same time, navigating, stuff like that. Which you can do in a plane, and then you move on to the basic rotary.
Is there because I love the way that pilots talk to each other. I mean, it's very calm.
Roger.
Yeah, it was Roger, and then like I love it because I'm like I could never do that. Like, hello, hey, I'm coming in now.
Well, there were I remember when I was learning up in Lincolnshire, you'd be out flying and you'd hear other people coming off on the radio, and we'd always laugh because especially when you're learning, you are completely maxed out. Your brain is maxed out on concentrating on where you're navigating to, what's going on. Don't mess up because I had a bad sortie last time, that sort of thing. So when you've got to make a radio call, often people would press the transmit and go, and their brain would fall out their ear, and they go, and you would hear some hilarious calls coming from people. And but the air traffic were used to it because it was people learning. But
I bet.
and
And
you
then
gradually get used to it.
So after you've done a bit of fixed wing flying, and then do you go back down to Andover or
not yet? So
mid-order?
we then go to RAF Shawbury, which is near Shrewsbury in Shropshire. Really lovely part of the world. I spent maybe 4 or 5 months there, and that's where you do your basic rotary. So that's tri-service. So all the Navy, RAF and Army helicopter pilots do the same basic rotary course. So I can't remember how many hours it was, but maybe 50 or 60 hours on a squirrel. And that's where you go solo for the first time.
Hold on, a squirrel, like a helicopter.
No, it's yeah. It's
I was thinking Stuart Clark's riding on the back of a squirrel right now. Like, okay,
yeah, it's probably the most common helicopter you'll see flying around. Eurocopter. I can't remember what the designation is.
But that was your first time flying in a helicopter?
Yeah.
Or
first time flying in a helicopter, yeah.
Wow.
I remember the instructor who took me out for my first go at hovering, and he was he was a Navy guy, and he said, we got chatting, and he said, look, Stu, no one gets this first time, because essentially he would fly, you both have controls, so he would fly it out to the middle of the field, nothing to crash into for quite a way, and he'd bring it to a hover, 10-foot hover, and essentially the downdraft of the air creates this bubble of high pressure air underneath you, and so you're sitting on top of it, and you basically, you can fall off that sort of bubble of air, and so he hands over control, and you go, I have control, and you try and keep it hovering still, and within 5 seconds you're like, whoa, and you massively over control when you first do it, so you're trying to stop yourself falling off this like bubble of air, and then he goes, I have control, as you fly off, and you go, right, I've got it, takes it back, and 4 or 5 goes, and you're getting better at hovering in one place. And he said to me, yeah, Stu, I mean, I was terrible at this when I first started it. He said he was a really slow learner, and he nearly didn't pass his flying course. But it made him a really good instructor. He was very sort of sympathetic to everyone's, to everyone's sort of difficulties in learning. And then you once you've learned to hover, you learn to taxi around the field, and then you go off and learn to fly, navigate around and do quick stops and all sorts. And
that sounds so cool, man.
Yeah.
How do you fly a helicopter? Is it like, I mean, you've got like a stick in the middle, and then
use the
pedals?
force.
Use the force. Is it
so
it's not like a car?
So you've
but
got 2 hand controls. You've got a collective in your left hand, which goes up and down, and all that changes the pitch on the blades. So all that does is lift you up and down. The pedals move the pitch on the tail rotor. So if you push in left pedal, you'll swing around. It depends which way your tail rotor goes. Different ones go different ways, but it will swing you, it will yaw you. And then the cyclic, essentially, if you think of the spinning blades as a disc, the cyclic tilts the disc forward, back, left, right. And so, but each input affects the other input. So as you pull collective, it makes you yaw, so you then have to put pedal in to stop yourself yawing, and it also makes the disc kind of do that. So you have to.
Dude, this sounds so complicated.
It is, yeah. I mean, it does take a while to get. But
is it like muscle memory? Is it?
It is muscle memory. I think if I got in a helicopter now, I wouldn't know how to start the thing, but I could probably bring it to a hover and go fly it, I reckon. Right at the end of my career, I hadn't flown for maybe 18 months. I've been in a training role in Warminster, and went out on an exercise in Canada, out just to the east of Calgary. There's a place called Medicine Hat, and there's a huge, vast bit of real estate north of there called Bathurst, which is a British training area, where we can go and train, with large amounts of soldiers and manoeuvre warfare, which we don't have the space for in the UK. And there's always a helicopter detachment out there. And at the time, there were no military helicopters to be able to take over there. They were all deployed in Afghanistan and places like that. And so they had a local company who flew Hueys, called Mustang helicopters, and they were, one of them was ex-British military. It's probably how they ended up doing that. And they did heli skiing in the winter and like a lot of firefighting in the summer. But they came and gave us helicopter support on an exercise, on which I was the aviation advisor, and I was stuck in an office most of the time. But then got chatting to one of the pilots, and he said, "Well, do you want to come out flying?" I had to go to one of the PBs out in the area to brief the guys out there. And I came out to the aircraft. He looked at me and he was like, "We get in the front," and so I got in the front, and then and he sat there and he went, "You're flying it." And I haven't flown in about a year and a half, and he said, "Oh, you'll get it. It's easy." And it's muscle memory. It is like riding a bicycle. I mean, obviously it's a bit more complex, but when you first learn to drive a car, changing gears using the clutch, you go like, how the hell does this work? It's quite tricky, but you figure it out, and it becomes quite natural.
Awesome, man. What does it feel like flying a helicopter?
I mean, it depends what you're doing. If you're flying along at 50 feet, wazzing and zooming, it's great fun. If you're just transiting at 3,000 feet, it's pretty boring.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, look, you mentioned obviously during your it wasn't even your training, was it? It was your initial tests and stuff that 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
That was a huge time in our history, and obviously created a huge mission for war on terror. I mean, tell me then, so I guess going back there, did you get this feeling that what you were doing was about to get seriously real?
Yeah, I mean, I was at Sandhurst when the Iraq invasion happened, and I remember watching the toppling of the Saddam sort of statue whilst I can't remember what term I was in, but I was at Sandhurst at the time, and most people leaving Sandhurst knew they were going out to Iraq. Afghanistan had kicked off a couple of years earlier when the Taliban had been defeated in the north. So there were Brits out there, but we hadn't sent the big deployment at that stage to Helmand, I don't think. So it was always when going through training, we knew we were going to end up in the desert, I think, somewhere. I mean, I was coming back to, I suppose, my progress through training. So after Shawbury, you end up everyone goes off to their different places. Actually, one of the interesting things at Shawbury is on my course we had 2 German guys. So the Germans don't have their own flying school, and they were quite well. One of them was an amazing character. He had a proper box head, and he was very German. And one of them was from Eastern Germany. He was very quiet, very serious. But focused, and the other one was one of life's great characters, and he was an aficionado of British comedy. So he'd literally seen every Blackadder, every Monty Python. He loved British humour, and he knew how to ham it up as well. We would be in a formal mess dinner or something, and we'd be chatting away, and he would just come out with corkers like, "Yeah, but you started it," and all of us who knew him were crying with laughter inside, and the other person would be like, "Hang on, what's going on here?" The Germans don't have their own helicopter flying school, so they send some out to America and some to the UK. But that was cool too.
Obviously, the modern armies do share a lot, right? I mean, you're always collaborating, and particularly during that time, the war on terror and stuff. I mean, was it like? I mean, there's lots of different countries involved in the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. Was it confusing at times, like who's in charge, or did we always know America was?
No, I mean, we had our own separate area in Iraq. I mean, we were basically in charge of Basra, the biggest city down in the south of Iraq, and the sort of the surrounding province.
When you say we, you mean like
the
Britain?
Brits? Yeah.
Wow.
And the Americans were all up north. So in Iraq, we had it wasn't peaceful, but it was a less messy place than up north in Fallujah and places. Some Brits did go up north and work with the Americans up there, but generally, Basra had its own. We were being resupplied by convoys from Kuwait a lot. They were getting IED'd, so blown up by improvised explosive devices, and the guys out patrolling in Basra were getting attacked every now and then. But it was generally a lot less hot than up north. Whereas in Afghanistan, it was the other way around. We were in well, the Americans were in some cheeky place in Afghanistan, but most of the coalition forces, like, they were in totally peaceful places. And
So how much do you know in terms of, obviously the higher ups? You've got NATO and you've got I guess the actual the leadership of these countries. I mean, like, what do they tell you lot? Because I mean, we as the public just watch the news and think we know everything, but then like you literally have to live and breathe this, and you're getting briefed on the details and what's going on. I mean, what was the mission?
Well, I suppose my third tour of Iraq, I got a real insight into that. So, shall I come on to that? I'll just quickly talk you through my training and then going.
I mean, because you had a huge amount of time actually in operations, but I mean, so let's just take you back to the infancy of your hovering.
Well, no, I mean, so basically, you all go off to your own separate places, and that's the point where you do more from the army perspective. Went down to Middle Wallop, and you learn how to fly in an army style rather than an RAF or a navy style, I suppose, and do more tactical flying, sneaking around, hiding behind trees, and going into little confined areas in woodlands, and more learning how to do kind of reconnaissance and I don't know, more tactical rather than lumping and dumping, which is what the RAF do more with their helicopters. And then you convert onto whichever airframe you're going onto. I had joined up wanting to go onto Apaches. I thought that's the coolest bit of kit. And then
these are these like war machines, these absolute just like brutal. I mean, what do they call them? What do the Taliban call them?
Wasps.
The wasps. Yeah, Jesus, yeah. And what was that process like?
Well, essentially, when I was at Middle Wallop, there were a lot of guys there converting onto Apache who were Apache pilots, and they were the most miserable people because they did most of their flying at night. It was a really to go and fly it and fire the weapon systems and stuff. Really cool, really fun. But beyond that, it wasn't very. They did not enjoy it. Whereas I met like Lynx pilots who absolutely loved it, because it's a very versatile sports car, basically, 1970s sports car, and I just went, I want to fly that. So went on to the Lynx, did my conversion there, and then got posted out to Germany to a place called Gütersloh in northwest Germany. Tried to get on a German language course, but immediately got that cancelled and sent to Poland, where they were on exercise, freezing in the middle of winter, just to get a sort of insight into what the squadron were doing out there. And then ended up going out to Bosnia for 4 months, which was great. It was a really good place to learn how to properly fly an aircraft in crappy weather and mountains where there's no room for error. I mean, Bosnia was peaceful. We were essentially just flying around diplomats, UN people, aid workers, and stuff like that. The war had ended at 96 or 7 or something like that. But there was still quite a lot of tensions there, and there was still you'd be flying over a ridge line, and you'd just come to this burnt out ruined village with a load of crosses outside it, and it was pretty. I'd read a lot on Bosnia, and I remembered it quite vividly on the news when I was younger. So it was quite a emotional visit, but it's one of the most beautiful countries in Europe, and I've been back as a tourist since, and I love the place, and I strongly encourage anyone to go on holiday to Bosnia. It's a fantastic.
It's not
country.
Something you'd think, does it? Like, should we go on holiday to Bosnia?
Well, you can do if you've got a 10-day trip, and I've recommended this to a few people who've done it. And I said, look, fly into Dubrovnik. You can get an easy jet flight there on the Croatian coast. Rent a car. You can drive up to Mostar, drive to Sarajevo, loop round through Montenegro, through the mountains in northern Montenegro, down to the beach in Montenegrin coastline, which is beautiful, and out of Dubrovnik. And if you've got 10 days for a holiday, you can't beat that.
Go and do it.
It's so beautiful.
So you were effectively doing doing more training, but live, in action, sort of. And then was that then a precursor to your first tour?
Yes. Well, I mean that counted as my first tour because it was an active military sort of engagement there. We were based in Banja Luka, up in northern Bosnia. There were a couple of thousand Brits on the camp. but we weren't being shot at, so it was a peaceful tour. And it was just, I was quite lucky because that was a good place to sort of get better at flying, essentially, before going out to the desert, because the desert's a really difficult place to fly. It's hot, so when it's hot, the air's really thin, so the blades are pushing on thinner air, and the engines are getting less oxygen, so you're using your engines right up to their maximum capacity all the time, and once it gets over a certain temperature, you literally can't fly, you can't take off. So in the desert, you're constantly checking all your numbers for your weight, for your limits, and then you're landing in dust. So as you approach the ground, the whole place dusts up and clouds out, so you lose all your visual references. So it's quite ninja. And yeah, when you get into theatre in Iraq, we would go out, for the first few flights, we'd go out with an instructor and go out into the desert where there's no one around and just practice desert landings, and then do it at night, and then do it on goggles, which is super tricky.
Night vision.
Yeah, we did. So because it was so hot there, I did my first 2 Iraq tours. They were 4 months long each, and would have been the summer of 2006 and 2007, I think. And in the summer there, it's 50 plus degrees in the day.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But the good thing about that is you can't fly at 50 degrees.
It's great.
So we would do most of our flying. Like, it would get down, I can't remember what temperature it needed to be, but we couldn't really do much flying. The Lynx had been designed for Western Europe. It wasn't designed to operate in a really hot place, but we adapted it. Have sand filters on the engines and stuff to keep the air clean going into them, but which again restricted your performance. But so I think above about 34 or 5 degrees, you were very limited in what you could do. You could take maybe 20 minutes of fuel, and 1 passenger kind of things. But once it got down into the mid-20s, so at night time, it would get to temperatures where you could fly and you could do stuff that was useful. So we basically lived a reverse cycle where, we'd go into brief at 10 p.m. By midnight, it was cool enough to go flying, and we'd fly until 10 a.m. sort of. So much of it was on goal. I mean, the most enjoyable flying was as the sun came up, and you go and fly down the Euphrates, and it was lovely. But most of it was on goggles, so you're looking at the world through 2 little green circles. You have no peripheral vision. The goggles weigh, I don't know, kilo, and then on top of your flying helmet, you wear another kilo and a bit lead weight on the back of your helmet to counterbalance it. So you've got this huge weight on your head. If you're in the right-hand seat on goggles, if you're coming into land, you need to be looking out. Normally you have peripheral vision, so you can see how fast you're going. You can see if you're drifting. You've got lots of visual cues. But at night time, you've got no visual cues, so you're just constantly having to move your head around and then land, and then it dusts out, and you're aiming at a little stone or something that's not going to move. You're aiming to land on, essentially, or next to. And there's a real danger that you drift. You have the crewman in the back calling out whether you're drifting right or left, because you often, if you're coming into a spot, you can come around like that and land with sideways sort of momentum and roll the aircraft. So there's a lot of teamwork and talking. There's a patter of talk between all the crew. The crewman's essential at making sure, calling out your height. He's telling you, right, you're at 15 feet, 10 feet, 5 feet, and it's
wow. What was the actual mission then for the Army Air Corps? I mean,
we were there. Well, the Lynx guys were there. We had quite a mixed bag, really, because the Lynx wasn't particularly useful for lumping and dumping men and kit. It couldn't carry a huge amount. Normally, you could, if you're flying it here, you could carry 6 to 8 people in the back, depending on the conditions. But we couldn't carry that in Iraq. But it actually made it quite an enjoyable tour, because we got given loads of different things. So one day we'd be taking out engineers to recce a new place where they're going to put a base, or recce a road, or recce somewhere where they want to build a road. Or the convoys, as I talked about earlier, they were being attacked very regularly coming up from Kuwait. So we would meet them at the border, and we'd fly along in front of them, trying to spot anything suspicious on the road. And if you saw a lump of dirt or a dead dog or any they would put bombs inside dead animals at the side of the road, or lumps of dirt, any kind of disturbance to the road, and you call it in, and then the whole convoy would stop. They'd send out guys with metal detector. I mean, you wouldn't want to be doing that job. And a few of them did get killed while I was over there. Just convoy protection, I suppose. Their eyes and ears, or eyes above them, clearing the route ahead. We did quite a lot of. We were based to the west of Basra. Basra is now Basra International Airfield, I think it is. Big, massive runway, civilian airport that you can fly a 747 into. But we had a part of it. A lot of it was taking people from there. So troops coming into theatre would land there, and we'd take we would take people from there to Basra Palace or some of the other places where people were based around the area. Did quite a lot of. So we had a camera set up called an MX-15. So have you ever watched sort of police camera action where they're black and white video if they're following a car on the ground? So we had one of them. And so when there weren't that many operations going on, but every now and then, it was the SBS who were in Iraq, the SAS were out in Afghanistan at the time, and the SBS would go and do knocking on doors, and they would go and raid a compound to try and get a high value target or someone they were after. So we would often provide the video footage overhead for that. So we would fly up, we'd be orbiting at 6,000 feet with the camera, the crewman using an iPad to control the camera, the captain in the front, the pilot would be flying, captain sat next to him would be controlling the radios and looking at the camera footage and saying, right, come go and look at that, move it onto that. And we'd be watching them do their operation, and then if someone ran out the back of the building, we'd call it to them.
We got a runner.
Got a squirter.
A squirter?
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
The special forces are obviously quite secretive. I mean, what can you tell me about working with them?
Nothing. I'd have to kill you. They were quite an interesting bunch. I mean, you could spot the American special forces from a mile away. They're all ripped, massive guys who, and they look like they're special. Most military regular guys are clean shaven and smart, whereas the special forces guys have big beards and kind of unconventional kit. Some other country's camouflage, a helmet that wasn't normal, and all sorts. So the guys I met in Iraq, they were quite an eclectic bunch, I suppose. They weren't like the Americans all ripped. There were some of them were quite, obviously quite meaty guys, but a couple of them were quite scrawny, kind of computer techie guys, and there was some real characters, and they had their own compound, so we didn't get to go and sort of hang out with them that much. But you get chatting to them when you're briefing before they were going on a mission. You'd tell them what you could provide to them, and we'll be doing this, and they'd say, "Well, can you do that?" And be like, "I'm not sure we can." We had one quite interesting sortie with them where we dropped them off on the outskirts of Basra in the morning, as sort of first light. Just as it was getting light, so some probably not above the horizon. And then no, it wasn't actually. Sorry, it was just before dark. Anyway, we dropped them off. They were covered in equipment. They spent a lot of their time putting out listening posts and doing reconnaissance essentially. And they were covered, had loads of equipment. They went off, tabbed into Basra, and we had to pick them up later, about 6 hours later or something. And it was pitch black. We were on goggles. We landed at the spot we were due to pick them up, and we couldn't see them. Suddenly they came running towards us. Like, oh, why are they running? And they came running, and they jumped in, and they were just like, go, 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 go,
go.
Like, okay.
Oh my god! Did you know what they were running from in the end?
They were being followed by people.
Just doing their operations.
Yeah, they kind of got. I don't know if you would say they've been compromised, but they had been. people. I mean, they didn't look like regular civilians, so if people spotted them, they would be like, "All right,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of people here." And
It is interesting because I think in the last, I guess the last few years, really, there's been a lot of veterans coming out with the stories and stuff like that from back in that day. And I've only really just started learning about what Iraq and Afghanistan was really about. But when you were in theatre, was it clear to you what the objectives were? And I mean, it's difficult because I mean, there was the high value targets. You've got Iraq was Saddam Hussein,
yeah,
right? And then Afghanistan, the Taliban.
Yeah,
Basically.
Yeah, so
I'm sure it's
Iraq,
more complicated, but
we went into Iraq on false pretenses, and the weapons of mass destruction thing turns out was not true. I mean, at the time, I thought we were doing the right thing to go in there because they were committing a genocide against what they call the Marsh Arabs, and they were persecuting the Kurds, and it was Saddam was a pretty nasty piece of work. But in hindsight, it's a bit like Assad in Syria. He was a horrible piece of work, but actually he kind of kept a firm lid on some pretty nasty groups of people. Is it the right thing to have gone and removed them? And in Iraq, turns out it was a disaster. We ended up essentially fighting a proxy war against Iran. So Iran was supplying all sorts of weapons into southern. The border from Iran was literally the other side of Basra. When you're flying along the border in the daylight, you could see the Iran-Iraq war in the 80s. It was basically brutal trench warfare, and you could still see all these trenches zigzagging along either side of the border. And but yeah, I mean, in hindsight, we made a real mess of it. We disbanded their military when we should have actually kept their military and their police going and kept order. And we failed to keep order, so it all turned into
hindsight's wonderful.
Sunnis and Shias fighting each other.
I mean, you can always look back at these sort of things and say what we shouldn't have done.
Well, for me, it was quite. Prior to that, we'd intervened in Bosnia and Sierra Leone, and at the time I thought, well, actually, military intervention we'd had two outcomes that were positive from military intervention. So I thought, we should, it's the right thing to do, and hadn't quite appreciated how badly it would go wrong. So
and obviously, whilst the wars were happening, people were dying on both sides. Civilians, Taliban, British, American, people all over the place. I mean, how did you feel when you'd hear about death? Was it something
when being on Basra Air Base, when British soldiers got killed, they would get repatriated from Basra Air Base, so we'd all go and stand out to have like a short service as the coffin was loaded onto the transport plane. And so it happened. Well, we were also being rocketed, I suppose, every day. The Iranians were supplying, I can't remember what rockets they were, but two different types of rocket. Very basic rockets that they would line them up on sand dunes 5-6 miles away, a series of them, so 5 or 6 or so, and 2 or 3 times a day, an alarm would go off, and you get about 10 seconds before the rockets landed on base somewhere.
Oh my God!
And so they weren't very good at aiming. Allah guided them, but they initially, when they started doing it, they would be there, setting them off. And we brought in artillery. We had some quite high tech systems. So there was one system that could detect within a second of this thing, the rocket being launched. It would detect exactly where it had come from. So our artillery would then straight away. So they then learned the Jerry Adams washing machine timer trick of put them out there, put a washing machine timer on it, go away, and then they would launch. And we had a Swedish machine which we called the Giraffe, which was basically a transport container, a Seacan ISO container, it was yellow and with a little mast and a spinning radar on top, so it looked like a giraffe. And it was amazing because it would detect which way the rocket's launching, set all the alarms off. You normally had like 8 to 10 seconds to find some cover, get your helmet on, which if you didn't have it on, make sure your body armor was on, just lie flat on the deck. And if it landed on you, you're in trouble. But if it landed 10 meters away, the blast explosion would generally go over you. So we lost a few people on the base to rocket. It also meant we didn't get a night's sleep, proper night's sleep undisturbed for 4 months. So it was exhausting. And a friend of mine in his accommodation had the rocket landed on the other end of the room, blew it up. A guy called Gabriel Birchall, and he came out covered in dust and sort of it was you lie there on the floor going, right, I know, actually the interesting thing was, because they always launched them in salvos, they would often land in a pattern, and every morning at the morning brief you'd be shown what was called a splat map of where they'd landed. And the airbase is huge. It was 2.5 by 2 miles, a huge bit of real estate. And the only thing from 6 or 8 miles away that they could see is the air traffic control tower, which is right where we were, right next to it.
Oh, great.
But they're unguided rockets, and they would launch them all off. And you'd be lucky in a salvo of 6 if 1 or 2 landed actually in the perimeter of the airbase. But what was really sort of butt clenching was when you'd hear an explosion quite far away, and then the next one was closer, and the next one was closer, and you knew that they were going to land in a pattern, and that's when you're like, oh
my God. So I mean, and it's hard to imagine, but they're fighting against the biggest war machine that's ever existed in history. I mean, why would they even try?
I mean, they didn't want us there. We could go into, you could talk all day about it. I mean, it's there's a lot of long-term hatred between the different groups there who wanted to fight each other, and we were in the way.
Oh wow.
One side had been very suppressed by Saddam during his reign. The other side then it was being supplied by Iran once Saddam had gone, and it was a melting pot, and it was messy. And
I can imagine. Really. So how you did? How many tours?
So I did 3 tours there.
In Iraq.
Yeah, my third one I went out there as in a desk job. So in the operations.
So you were saying you got a little bit closer to the high command and understanding the bigger picture.
Yeah, so I went out there as I was still quite a juniorish officer. I was the J5 plans was my title. So I was in the what was it called? JHFI, Joint Helicopter Force Iraq. So it was a mixture of Army, RAF, and Navy. And there's a commanding officer, and then he has an operations officer who's J3, who basically runs things, day-to-day stuff. And then you have the plans guy, which was me, who is looking at what's coming up and making the plans, liaising with the infantry guys who want to do stuff. They come to me with requests, and I'd be like, okay, well, we can do this for you. But within a few weeks, the guy who was the ops officer wasn't really up to the task. So I got moved into that position and ended up being the ops officer there, which was quite a serious responsibility. I mean, essentially being in charge of all the aviation in southern Iraq. But the interesting thing was, every day I would go over to the main, there was a main command center, which was in command of, commanded all we were an offshoot, we were the aviation bit, but there was a main command center, huge, great room with big screens everywhere and 100-odd people in it, and they were controlling all the different assets on the ground and the convoys and everything. And so I'd go there for a briefing every day, and that's where I got a really interesting insight into what was going on, how different it was to what was reported in the press. NATO didn't really have anything to do with it. It was more, everything was Five Eyes. So Five Eyes is an agreement between the British, the Americans, the Aussies, the Kiwis, and the Canadians. And essentially, Five Eyes are like, if Britain was invaded tomorrow, they are the people who are going to come and help us. Like the Europeans don't feature because they're not reliable allies. So everything we did was, every bit of paper was, secret, Five Eyes only. We had a couple of Danish guys attached to us. This is in Afghanistan. Every time they came into briefings, it had to go to Downing Street to get it signed off that the Danes could actually come in on this, Five Eyes classified stuff. It was we also had, I think there were Estonians there actually in Basra, and a few other nationalities sort of attached and stuff. But
so in these like operation rooms or command centers or something. I mean, first of all, do they look like the movies? Like, is it like humongous?
not as glossy,
not as glossy
not
as
clean,
the films.
still
Yeah.
a bit more dusty.
And then what kind of personnel are in there? I mean, are we talking very high?
I
ranking,
can't remember who was in charge, but
like
brigadier
intelligence and
loads of ink guys. People from every different branch of the military. Essentially, you had logistics guys in there. Everything that the military does, they would have a representative in there to sort of, if they're planning an operation, the guy running the operation wants to know from the signals guys what the comms are like. They want to know what the support's going to be like from logistics. They want to know all the int stuff. So yeah.
And what about the press then? Because I mean, the press were having a bit of a field day in those times. I think
Well, this is where
selling a lot of newspapers.
Until I went there, I used to believe the press, and that was when I realised actually that 90% of what's in the newspapers is utter garbage.
Really?
Yeah. Well, not utter garbage, but it's just like secondhand tizzle tattle, a lot of it. And like there was loads going on that the press either misreported or just didn't have a clue about. And it's. Do
you think those days are gone though? Like the power of the tabloid press?
Oh well, I mean, I think a lot of people have lost all respect for the legacy media. Yeah, and quite rightly. Like, the BBC is just a propaganda outfit, in my view.
No, I mean, but I think that's a generational realization. It's very difficult.
Well, people have got access to social media now, so they can see. The BBC will report something, and everyone goes on social media, and you see videos that completely contradict what the press are saying, and the press have got a difficult job now because they can't run a story in the way they want to. They have, even though they still haven't got used to that, I don't think.
I want to take a very quick break to thank Bell & Co for helping to sponsor this episode. If you're looking for a place to live on Alderney, whether it's renting or buying, go and visit Bell & Co. They have all the information about what's available on Alderney and can also help guide you to some of the best things to do on the island. Go and visit bellandcoalderney.com and find out how you can escape to paradise. Back to the episode. Well, look, Stuart, I could talk to you all day about your military operations, and more importantly, it's kind of there's so much to that period of your life, and I think for everyone,
well, it's 3 tours of Afghanistan afterwards.
So three of it. Well, hold on a second, we were only just like touched on Iraq.
We just done the first bit.
Well, then why don't you tell me then what was the difference? Iraq and Afghanistan, they sound like the same place.
Well, I mean, it's a difference for me from what I after those Iraq tours, I then, as an army officer, you fly for a certain period and then you go off into desk jobs and you have to promote. And I basically said to my commanding officer, if you put me in a desk job, I'm leaving. And so he got me an attachment to the RAF. So I ended up flying Merlins for the RAF for 4 years.
A similar helicopter to
much bigger,
Lynx?
so a big, £37 million. It was the replacement for the Sea King, so designed to go on the back of ships. It's if you see a modern warship now with a helicopter on the back, quite a big one. It's that's a Merlin, but they made a variant for regular land operations, and it was amazing. It was as maneuverable as a Lynx. It was it was an incredible, it was a British helicopter. Typically British, massively over-engineered. The most complicated thing. The Russians built helicopters that were just bomb-proof. Very simple. The fuel control system in Mi-17, which was a Russian version or equivalent to a Merlin. I think it had 3 moving parts, and there were like 20 moving parts in the Merlin's one. So everything in the whole aircraft was that complex. We had 2 electrical systems independent. We had 2 hydraulic systems. It was designed to just have backup of everything. But it meant that every time you started it, there was like a 20% chance a light would come on and it wouldn't work. So you'd shut it down, try again.
Get the manual out.
Well, no, we always the first thing you do is you just turn everything off again. Like you do with the computer. Turn it all off, try again. And then again, it was another 20% chance. And if after the second time it still doesn't work, you either call a greenie or a blackie out. And a
greenie?
So a greenie is an electrical engineer. A blackie, because they're covered in oil and stuff, is like mechanical stuff. So
Interesting.
different types of engineers.
Okay, so you're now working with the RAF in Afghanistan.
Well, yeah, I was based in RAF Benson in Oxfordshire, which was really great. I mean, I had the most amazing 4 years in Germany, and I could tell you all sorts of fun stories. But yeah, ended up coming back to the UK, which was great because Oxfordshire, easy to get into London, where or Sussex, where I'm from, catch up with friends. Really enjoyed working with the RAF. Slightly different attitude and sort of method of doing stuff, but I looked at it as a sort of halfway house to being a civilian. It wasn't as military, army as the army was, but yeah, I really enjoyed it and made some really great friends there. But yeah, did 3 tours of Afghanistan flying Merlins. So they were all 3-month tours. So you would do 1 tour every year, and then you spend 3 months away. Well, actually, you build up. You have 6 months of sort of training and leading up to it. Have 3 months away, then you get the best part of 2 months off, or going off to do adventurous training or skiing or traveling, whatever. And then you kind of start the cycle again. And that aircraft, we were mainly lumping and dumping stuff, but it was like the best job to do there. The poor guys in the Apaches would, so you the Helmand River Valley, quite a sort of flat river valley with agricultural farmland either side of the river. And we were in a place called Camp Bastion, which was, I think, about 10 miles out into the desert. Huge base, like
a mini city.
30,000 people there, 25,000, I can't remember. But yeah, every day we'd be flying people from Camp Bastion out to, there were maybe, I don't know, it varied, but there were 80 or so different patrol bases around the place, some bigger, some smaller, and we'd be lumping people and kit and food and water in and out of them.
And this was a very different terrain. Was it similar to Iraq, or was it?
It was
mountains or...
No, it was quite different. Like southern Iraq was very flat, stank of burning oil and rubbish, and it was pretty grim, southern Iraq. Whereas Afghanistan is quite beautiful. I mean, the Helmand's quite a deserty, desolate place, apart from the quite fairly lush river valley and either side of it, and then mountains in the distance. I mean, the most beautiful parts of Afghanistan are all up in the north and east, which I went to as a tourist. A bit late.
You went. Yeah, Stuart, you're going to these like places with a high risk.
We were sent to like the shittiest place in Afghanistan.
Wow. Was the casualties more or less than Iraq and Afghanistan?
I think there were more in Afghanistan.
Really?
Yeah.
So different type of warfare, was it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I won't go into what all the infantry were doing. I mean, trying to. We had all the sort of major towns and villages. We had a base attached to, and they were they're essentially just trying to keep the peace there and enable rebuilding efforts, building schools, hospitals, rebuilding the roads. And problem is, every time you build a school, the Taliban would come along and blow it up. I mean, I remember my very first week in Afghanistan. Every morning we'd have a morning brief where the guy would give us a overall picture of what was going on in the area. And the wider context, and the first week we were there, they said, all right, yesterday the Taliban threw grenades into a schoolyard when the kids were playing, like killed 6 kids, maimed another 8, and they did it purely so that when I think it was Americans sent in helicopters to pick up the casualties, to take them to hospital, that they could attack the helicopters coming in. And you think, like, what kind of ideology do you have where you are happy to sacrifice your own people, your own children, purely so you can attack the enemy? I mean, we were essentially fighting against people who had been educated in madrasas that had taught them the most extreme form of Islam, and they'd not had a wider education than that. That's all they knew. So they were so sort of devout that that to them was the right thing to do. And you think, oh, you can't defeat people like that. You can't. We killed them on an industrial scale, and everyone you kill, 2 more turn up because their cousins come and join the fight. So, very difficult to defeat that kind of ideology.
Yeah, I think we're only really finding out about all this stuff. I mean, us civvies are finding out about it through the documentaries and all these new podcasts and stuff. And it makes sense now that like while we have all of our ideology based on hundreds of years of I guess working together, it does seem like that that kind of extremism in places that are very impoverished and very difficult to live in. We just wanted them to have like democracy and freedom and everything. Like it's like you go from 0 to 100.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean it's sad because I could talk about this all day long, but I've always known a lot about Afghanistan because my auntie is Afghan, and I'm not going to sort of mention any names, but her family fled the Taliban. They fled Afghanistan in the late 70s when the communists took over and the Russians invaded, and her father was a doctor of psychology, and he had got his doctorate at Edinburgh University. So when it all kicked off in, I think it was 78, he picked up the kids and fled to Scotland, and she grew up in Scotland from the age of maybe 8 or 9, I can't remember. But one of her brothers stayed in Afghanistan, and he because he was at university there, ended up very bright guy, ended up going to Moscow. The Russians sent him to Moscow to train him to become the ambassador to the UK. And he went through a couple of years of that. And then the day when they sent him to the UK, he defected. So he joined the rest of the family.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going back.
And he ended up working for, he was on the first plane into Kabul when it was liberated from the Taliban, in 2001, working for the Brits.
I've heard similar stories from people in that region of the world, how like 30 years ago, it was actually like a growing, thriving sort of place. And then
bits of it, I think Kabul was quite cosmopolitan. But, rural Afghanistan is like going back to the Stone Age. There's no electricity. There's the mud huts, not mud huts, but mud compounds. All the walls, they're all made of the local soil that's been, I don't know what their method is, but it's a very basic lifestyle when you're in the rural areas. And people they've not had any education or that we would consider hand to mouth existence, and we're trying to civilize basically people who live in a sort of very Stone Age environment. And sadly, partly because of the West, we trained a lot of them up to fight the Russians, which a lot ended up in northern Pakistan and got ideologically brainwashed. A lot of them got educated in very strict Islamic schools, madrasas, and southern Afghanistan particularly. I did think we were actually going to succeed there until actually only a couple of years ago, because I felt like we'd rebuilt an awful lot of it. And it's a shame we didn't stick it out.
The withdrawal from was it Iraq or
Afghanistan?
The withdrawal from Afghanistan, that was a big.
It was awful. I mean, it's just a massive cluster. Yeah, absolutely shameful, to be honest. I think what the Americans did there and left everyone in. I mean, it's difficult to know what exactly happened, and it's starting to come out now. But interestingly, I was looking at. I remember reading the newspaper, and whilst that evacuation was going on, when they were all evacuating from Kabul airport, and there were crowds outside, and I saw a photo of the British soldiers there trying to organise it. One of them was a guy I went through flying training with. I texted him. I was like, "Oh, I've just seen you in the newspaper," and he texted back and said, "Yeah, here, adminning it and trying to sort it out." And
shit show.
It was, I mean. I don't want to comment too much on that because I don't know enough about how that all went wrong or what was good. I think by the sounds of it, some people performed extraordinary feats getting people out of there, but it shouldn't have happened.
Well, this brings me nicely. I don't want to I never ever get away from great topics, but because by this time you've already become a civilian. What was that like going back into the civilian world after spending so long?
So. When I left the military, a really good mate of mine who I had been at university with, he had spent I spent 11 years in the army, and basically during that time he'd been a career academic, and he did his PhD at Imperial in essentially ecology and wildlife conservation. And we'd travelled together around South Africa when we were students, and we'd always talked about doing a massive overland trip. And we weighed up the different ones, London to Cape Town, London to Singapore, the Pan American Highway, and we decided we wanted to do London to Singapore. And so for years we've been talking about doing this, buying a Land Rover, going off on a big adventure. And it tied in quite well with when I left the military, and he just finished his PhD, and we were like, right, let's buy a Land Rover and go on an adventure. And we didn't get to Singapore because we ran out of money, but we drove through Europe, Central Asia, we drove to across northern Turkey, through Georgia, Azerbaijan, ship across the Caspian Sea into northwest Kazakhstan, and then all the way through Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, went into northeast Afghanistan, which is amazing.
Why did you go back there, man?
Well, at the time it was kicking off again, so this would have been 2015.
Wow.
The Americans had handed over control, and we were warned. We wanted to go to Mazar al-Sharif and places where my auntie's sort of family were, and her brother basically was keeping an eye. We had a satellite tracker. We took a little spot tracker, and he was following us the whole way. And he as we were going to go and cross into Afghanistan, he emailed and said, when you cross the border at Ishkashim, turn left, not right. And we ended up, we found a guide once we crossed the border, and he said, if you turn right, you won't get 100 miles. So we ended up going up into the Wakhan corridor. And Afghanistan, if you think of it as a blob, and the northeast corner, there's a little spindle of land that sticks out, which is a sort of a valley between the Pamirs, which are on the Tajik side, and then the Hindu Kush on the Afghan side. And it was weird that was drawn on the map when the Brits and the Russians were, competing for Central Asia back in the 1800s.
Wow.
And it was incredible. We ended up we picked up a hitchhiker actually who spoke brilliant English, and it turns out he was a mountain climber, and he had been, I can't remember the name of it, but Afghanistan's highest peak. He had been on an expedition. He was the first Afghan to climb that peak. The Swiss had flown him over to Switzerland. He was a tour guide and a mountain climber anyway, but they took him over to Switzerland, trained him up to do proper high alpine climbing, and then the Swiss and him did an expedition up and climbed Afghanistan's highest mountain. But randomly we picked him up, and we ended up staying the night at his house, and that part of the world, everyone invites you in, and sometimes if you get invited into someone's house, it's like, it's not just a quick like a cup of tea, it's sit down and let's eat, and it's
wow.
He said come and stay the night, and but then we ended up going further up the Wakhan, and met another person whose father was the chief of the area, and we stayed they had a sort of B&B attached to their compound, and we ended up staying there for a few days and going off and exploring.
How does it feel?
Have you watched Leveson Wood, where he tries to cross the Himalayas?
I've not. No. My expedition experience is very, very, very minimum compared to yours, Stuart. But how did it feel going back to the very place that you were?
It was a different world, really.
Meeting the civilians. I mean, like, is that the first?
Great. Well, the thing about that very northeast corner is, even when the Taliban ran the country in the 2000s, they didn't go there. It was people were friendly. Most people there don't want war. They'll support whoever's going to provide the security. And
you must have felt very welcome then to.
Yeah, it was an amazing thing to do. I mean, I've got some funny photos. There were still guys driving around with an AK slung over their back, and it was a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
I'd love to go back there.
What's it like culturally? I mean, like the food, like the houses.
It varies in different parts of Afghanistan, but in that part of the world, it's similar to Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan.
There's a lot of stands, isn't there?
Yeah, there's loads of stands. We didn't go to Turkmenistan or Pakistan.
I didn't even know there was that many stands. To be honest,
but we went to all the other stands.
Wow,
Kyrgyzstan's amazing.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite countries. Yeah, it's like 90% mountains. Got huge great lake called Lake Issyk. We were there in like November time. I had my skis with me. I attached them to the side of the van, so did some skiing there.
Wow. So a real adventure.
Yeah, a real adventure. Then we crossed into Western China, into Xinjiang, which is the area where they're persecuting the Uyghurs. So, which we didn't really know at the time. We were kind of following the Silk Road, the Silk Route, sort of the sort of trail between Europe and China from many hundreds of years ago. That we went to Kashgar, which was quite an important trading point on that route, and it was very weird. So we couldn't go into China by ourselves in the Land Rover. We had to have a Chinese guide with us. So it ended up being the most expensive bit of the trip, the 3 weeks we took to get through Western China. But we have always had someone kind of keeping an eye on us. But yeah, Kashgar was really sad because we were lucky to be there when we were, because some of the old town was still standing, but essentially they were bulldozing it and rebuilding it in like a Disneyfied version of it.
Oh, wow.
And it took about a week to drive around the south of the Taklamakan Desert, which is the second biggest sand desert in the world. And we had to stay in authorized hotels, which were, we had a roof tent on the Land Rover, and we've been camping as much as possible, or occasionally staying in B&Bs and like local family-run places, and had to stay in these ghastly hotels, and there were lots of like military police on the streets. And in hindsight, when the sort of persecution of the Uyghurs became more publicly known, we look back and go, yeah, that was just starting then. But the one thing I've missed out on the trip, so James, the guy I went with, with his PhD in ecology, we ended up visiting a whole bunch of different conservation projects on the way and spending time with them. And that was it. Made so many of the countries we went to, we met up with local snow leopard conservation groups, or in Nepal with rhino conservation, and it meant we were being hosted by scientists who spoke English, and a mixture of international scientists and locals, and so we had translators. You could communicate with the locals much better because they'd been educated, which you wouldn't always get if you're traveling through an area, and we haven't got time to learn 30 something languages. But they would take us off out into the middle of nowhere to go like to places where tourists just would never see, and it was really special. We had a highlight, and we made a video that's on YouTube of a bear release in where was it? The Vanj Valley in Tajikistan, where they had 2 bear cubs that they were re-releasing into the wild, and one of them had been in human captivity. It had been I think it had been caught with a poacher had it, so maybe killed the mother bear and had a baby bear cub to trade, and they confiscated it off him. And then another bear had been found where there'd been a big landslide, and the person who found the bear, they assumed that the mother had been killed in the landslide. So they had these 2 bears, and one had spent quite a lot of time around humans, and one hadn't. And we drove up into the middle of nowhere to release them, and with a lady there, American lady who was a bear specialist, and it was an incredible experience seeing these 2 little, well, not little, they were, I don't know, that size,
we can
running off
find
into the wild.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah, it is on YouTube. I can send you the link.
Okay, so then let's tell me how, when you first decided to move back to Alderney. Because this isn't as it is a natural beauty here, but after hearing all of this, I'm a bit like, wow, you have literally seen places in the world that no one could even dream about. You ended up coming back here, and bearing in mind you've kind of had a career where you've dealt with a lot of injustice and at a big level, big army, and and you've seen the political landscape change, and you've learned all this kind of stuff. Then you came back to Alderney, you took a look at it on the ground, and what did you think? This was going to be easy?
Yeah, well, after all my travels, I ended up setting up a a slow smoke barbecue food business with an old university friend in London, which we did for a few years in Hackney Wick in East London. And
Brilliant.
it was exhausting, working insane hours to basically not make as much money as the tax man out of it, and burning the candle at both ends far too much.
Yeah.
But I had a really fun couple of years. And in the end, just went, I don't want to live in the city, and moved here, bought a house, and just thought I'm gonna sit back and put my feet up for a bit. But yeah, I suppose I then last year just thought Alderney's had quite a lot of, I suppose, political instability in recent years, and myself and a few others just thought, well, let's run for election, and actually let's see if we can turn the island around. So got myself elected in December, and it doesn't really pay anything, so it's just something I think I'm only going to do for 4 years if I last that long. But I feel like I'm fortunate to have been elected with a few people, Edward, Buster, Jeannie, and who are all like, let's really push this. Let's get things changed. Let's change the momentum, the decline of Alderney, which it is. It's just we've been losing young people, losing family. I don't want to be sat in Alderney in my 60s, retired with my feet up, when there's no functioning school and there's no there aren't many shops open, and and we're going that way. I just thought, actually this would be a fresh challenge for me. And so far I'm really positive about it. I feel like we're actually turning the tide. We're starting to get stuff done, and making a real difference. And I'm mostly unfortunate that there's some really good people who've come in and are like, let's turn this island around. Yeah.
What's the biggest misconception that the residents of Alderney probably have around states members, and I guess the way that governance works on the island?
Misconception. We're all paid loads of money.
Yeah, the fat cats in the island hall.
Well, yeah. I mean, I suppose not everyone puts in lots of work, but some of us put in quite a lot of hours, and it's bloody hard work because I can't live on what the States pays me. So I also do a couple of days, 2 or 3 days work outside of the States every week, and it's exhausting. What's misconception? I don't know.
Well, I think from my point of view, and obviously I think my first presentation to the States was 2016, so nearly a decade of campaigning for the things that I believe in. But the gears have changed. Without being rude about some of the former States members, a lot of them were doing this for fun, and this new generation seemed to be doing it because it's
urgency. It's,
this is war.
There is a real drive of we really have to get this sorted out.
But you're pulling the hours as well. That's the point.
We all want to. We're all happy to put in the hours as much, because it's important. It's and it's already showing, it's already paying off. We've had numerous different business people approaching us saying, I want to do this in Alderney now, I want to do that. And I've had 3 different people come up to me this year saying, I approached the States last year, heard nothing back. I was like, what? So I'm like, right, let's chat. Let's have a meeting. And there's a lot of interesting ideas bouncing around, from renewables to data centers to all sorts of things that are going to provide jobs and employment on this island. And we're trying to encourage it. Not all of them will happen, not all of them will work, but if 1 or 2 of them pay off, And actually, I think I also want to say that I think we're very lucky that Bill Abel has stayed on as chair of PNF, so a senior politician. He's I think 79, wants to retire and put his feet up, and he just felt it was his duty. He looked at who the politicians were in December and went, I've got to be chair of PNF because none of the new people have the experience to do it. And we don't. It takes a while to work out how government works and the mechanisms and the processes, and you can't go straight into a role like that. And Bill puts in 60-hour weeks. Like, you get emails from him at 5 a.m, and he puts in a lot of work, and we don't all agree with him all the time, and he doesn't agree with us. But he's doing an absolutely outstanding job, I think.
I really appreciate that. I appreciate you saying that as well. And
I think it's important because he does get a bit of criticism, as any chair of PNF does. We don't like what you're doing. And actually, I like, he has stood up with a sense of duty to do it, and I'm like, that really means a lot.
I appreciate it. No, we all get and give criticism, don't we?
Yeah.
It's very hard to live on a small island.
We can't please everyone. Like, think about the dogs on beaches. I mean,
that was the biggest protest I've ever seen.
I want dogs to be allowed on a beach during the
summer.
You
got a dog.
I hate
little taxes.
I have 3 months of not being able to take my dog on the beach, and my
so
dog.
Explain that then. So there was a protest recently on Alderney.
Yeah, which I went to. But
what were you protesting?
The fact that there aren't any beaches, there aren't any sandy, accessible beaches, safe beaches to take a dog on for 3 months in the summer. And it's one of those things. If I didn't realise, and none of us new people didn't realise that actually it's a law, like it's ordinance.
Oh, really?
So the law says there will be no dogs on these beaches between these 2 days. And so in hindsight, we should have raised it in January. We should have gone, right, we need to get going on this, because it does take months and months and months for laws to change. There's all processes it's got to go through. It's got to go to the law offices in Guernsey. It's a long process. And but I suppose in May, we raised it. Like, we want to make one of the beaches dog friendly, and one of them should be like, there isn't.
Which one? Probably Lodgy.
I think either the eastern side of Bray. You never see anyone sunbathing or kids on the eastern, the Fort Albert end of it. Never see anyone there. Make the last 100 meters or so dog friendly, because then people can just it's safe. At the moment, I take my dog down to Clonk, and it depends on what the tide's doing as to whether she either goes in a rock pool or whether she risks.
And that's not safe.
And I personally, I'd like Longey as well, because Longey works for. It's got a couple of car parks, one at each end. You could put dog poo bags out. It would be, and if everyone's going to the same beach with their dogs, then people will keep an eye on each other.
Was there like pushback from this?
Because so there are some people who are so against it.
Really? Are they vocal, or are they written?
People have been stopped. Some of us politicians have been stopped in the street. Oh, you'll make the kids go blind and stuff.
Wow. I mean, it's interesting.
So it's a tough one.
Yeah. I mean, this is a great first test, isn't it, of the new generation of states members. Also great to figure out, well, how do we change a law? Because we can decide our own laws and so on. That's what people,
some of them
who don't understand Alderney, probably don't understand that we have. So explain what we can and can't do as a government.
Well, Guernsey have control, I suppose, of our criminal laws. I don't know. They seem to have control of a lot more laws than were originally outlined in the 1948 agreement. At the end of the day, we still don't have to wear a seatbelt in Alderney, whereas they do in Guernsey. So we've got control of that law.
That's because we don't die in crashes.
I don't understand why we've got that law and not others.
It's mad, isn't it?
But at the end of the day, it's all coming up for debate with the Bailiwick Commission later this year.
So tell me about that, because I have heard whispers of what this might entail. But this is a review of our relationship.
It's a review of the constitutional relationship between Guernsey and Alderney. So originally in 1948, Alderney was a smoking ruin and couldn't financially. It wasn't a viable place for people to live, really, without support from elsewhere. And Guernsey took on that and said, right, we pay our taxes to Guernsey, and they look after our services, our school and our roads. And we've gradually, over the years, a few things have come back to us, but essentially Guernsey. I suppose Alderney, we have more power than a parish council or local council in the UK, but not as Guernsey do still make the majority of the laws that govern us, and it's Guernsey basically. Well, a lot of people feel that it's been too long since actually that was re-looked at and worked out, and work out what is best for the future. Some people in Guernsey think we cost them too much money. and we don't pay it enough. But plenty of people think that the accounts that show that are not particularly accurate, and Alderney does produce a lot financially that benefits the bailiwick, particularly with the gambling stuff. They're going to get a huge amount of income from that, which they wouldn't if we weren't regulating it. But with whatever,
this all sounds like a bit of
it kind of needs to be. We generally all the Alderney States members are in support of having a commission, and the commission will be independent people. So it's likely to be ex-UK MPs who were Channel Islands reps, and people who've got knowledge of the Channel Islands but aren't particularly attached to one island or the other. It'll be some serious people. They're going to do a few months long study. I mean, who knows how long it will take, and come up with some recommendations.
Wow. Is this like Doge? Is this like Elon's Doge? Are we like demanding to see accounts? Like,
oh yeah, I mean, like we'll have some of the accounts are not very detailed on what Alderney costs, so we want to see like a proper breakdown. Yeah, because then Guernsey are in financial difficulties, and they're going to be making cuts probably over the next few years, and Alderney will have to make some cuts. So we can't cut anything if we can't actually see what's being spent. So yeah, that'll be one part of it.
Mate, good luck. Honestly, it's just like us. People who are just not in the political space at all have no hope of understanding what it is you have to deal with, and yet all we want to do is just kind of like all do our best. So it is difficult. I mean, do you feel that we have the skills on the island to sort of pull ourselves out of this?
I'm really positive. I think I think I think we'll be a going concern within 10 years. I think we will have to bring people in. I mean, we've got to grow the population. We need to grow the number of people who are of working age here. We have to get more. The school to be viable needs more kids in it. Take it back up to the numbers of 10 years ago or more. The shops, the flights. If the more people there are on the island, the more the more use of the transport connections. So they should become cheaper theoretically if more people are using them. That's one of the biggest issues is the transport cost. The cost of getting here is extortionate.
Isn't it? It's terrible.
And if the more people use the transport connections, hopefully the overheads are shared between more tickets, and it should bring down prices slowly. But it's never going to be cheap, sadly. But
there's also housing problems, and this is all the perfect storm really, because it's like we're coming to the end of the baby boomers, who have grown the culture and the island, and are now but then you've got it's easy to forget that there's still another generation just behind them, and behind them, behind them, behind them.
Yeah.
But right now it seems like it's the younger local population of the island who are having to leave and find other places.
There's just not enough. I mean, it's not even just for low income people. There's people who've moved here who are earning decent money who can't find a property to rent, and so Buster's actually been and Edward have been doing a lot of work on the housing side of things. They're both on the housing committee or working group. It's looking really promising. Essentially, rather than the states having to pay millions and millions to build new properties, obviously, I mean, we're all generally in favour of like leaving it to the private sector, because we're all kind of classically liberal on how an economy and a society should function.
Yeah,
but
we've tried building things before.
I mean, like, the states should be involved. Shouldn't be involved in building stuff really, but should set the policy to enable it. And they're looking at I can't remember what the terminology for it is, but essentially a pension fund will pay for the building of lots of properties, and then they will get the rent from it, because it gives the investors in that pension fund a set rate of return. Alderney may get a bit of income from it as well, but and there's some amazing kind of modular housing. I don't want to see like ugly council estates popping up, but actually some of the modern some of the options on the table actually will fit in quite nicely, and you can get other people to pay for it and provide more social housing, which we do need a bit more of, but also just affordable housing, and at the higher end, there's a bunch of properties coming onto the market, hopefully within, well, who knows with the grand development.
Exactly. I mean, we're going to try not to be too timely with this podcast, because you never know what's going to happen in the future. I mean, I am confident. I mean, Edward's built resorts and dealt with a lot of investors and stuff like that, so I think he's going to be really great. And then but Buster just understands the island and understands building.
You should get him on the podcast. I know you've had Edward.
We're gonna get. I mean, there's only 2,000 people, so my episodes are gonna like stop at 2,000. But no, I am very excited, and and I'm very grateful as well. I want to say that because I've literally spent so long trying to bring digital marketing and bring storytelling to the island, and knowing that as the only video content creator on the island.
You made some amazing videos.
It's difficult for me because this new generation of states are brilliant, and I'm like, oh my god, like progress is coming, but
trying to work out. I mean, it's difficult for us because we want to know how we can support you, and actually trying to get money to do it's quite tricky. But it's nothing's as easy as you think it's going to be.
No, it makes sense. I think like getting public hands on public money is difficult. The problem is obviously it's the irony that in other generations of states, you have 60 grand spent on a Bray Harbour development plan.
Well, we have tried to rein in.
You think about that and you go 60 grand. Imagine if you put that into a Facebook ad campaign, how many tens of millions of people could suddenly see Alderney. Why don't you do that as an experiment and just see what happens when you put Alderney in the map for 60k. Now, sadly, when I did speak to that generation, they're the ones who have never used social media, have never understood it, and because I think they've seen me growing up, they're like, oh, it's just Cam, he's they thought I was 25, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm not. I was like 32 at the time, and but that's the old. And
it's because you wear your baseball cap backwards.
I know, but you know what? I feel in some way that this new states generation have got something to prove. And it's great. It's great, because there's pressure in it.
I won't be seeking re-election. I can't afford to do this for more than 4 years. I will be judged on what we've done in that time, and I hope that within sooner than 4 years, people will go, oh, you guys are actually getting things done. Like, this is good. Because there hasn't been much progress in the past 10 years or more.
It's difficult to know what's going to happen without a crystal ball, and actually it's also very difficult because the more you try and stimulate the economy and do things, the less likely the worst is going to happen. But then it's hard to measure whether or not that was because of the things you've currently done. So like depopulation is a real major risk here with such a skewed demographics, and it's almost like, well, when they do pass on, those populations are going to go down. But when you're doing all these things for housing and transport and stuff, actually we are combating that. But we still might have something.
I mean, it's a bit of a weird one here because if you look at it purely on paper, the demographics, which you've pointed out a few times, it doesn't look good. But actually, a lot of the elder demographics, the retirees who come here, they do come here with a pension from outside, and they do come in and put money in, not take it out. So it's difficult. You can't really compare our demographics to the UK because it is a very different situation. Not at the same time, we do need enough young working people with kids and stuff to actually make the place function. And
so how do we do that then? I mean, you're a big fan of electronic dance music. We have had many great nights in the quarry parties, bunker parties. How extraordinary is Alderney, first of all?
It's amazing.
Tell me about the party scene on Alderney. What's it like?
When I was a teenager, and I remember, I'd come and spend my summer holidays over here, and I remember when I was about 15 or 16. In fact, no, I was probably younger than that when my uncle took me to my first bunker party, and I went back to school and said, guys, I went to this rave in a Nazi bunker, and everyone's like, what? And I was completely blown away by it, and we've got a pretty unique part, scene there. The bunker and the quarries are great places to go and party, and I would love them to be a destination where people in Jersey and Guernsey pop over for a night out and things. I think hopefully one day we'll get there with cheap little electric planes whizzing, drones whizzing people backwards and forwards.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so major artists. What's your wish list? Who do you want to? Who would you love to see play at a bunker or quarry party here?
Well, the band I'd love to get most to Alderney would be Fat Freddy's Drop. Who?
Fat Freddy's Drop.
Yeah, they're like a Kiwi 7-piece who play sort of dubby, slowly building dance music. They've got a 3-piece brass section. And they are the best band. I've spent a lot of my life going to music concerts, and
brilliant.
I've seen the Stones a couple of times. I've seen AC/DC, are amazing. I've seen the Who, and Fat Freddy's Drop I've seen 10 times.
Okay, Fat Freddy's Drop. You have a statesman.
If you go on
presence.
Spotify and put in Fat Freddy's Drop live at the Roundhouse, it's a great album.
Right. Anyone out there who knows Fat Freddy's Drop, like personally, please send them this clip.
Yeah, well, they're from New Zealand. They tour Europe once a year, every summer. So
hey, it's going to be just as hard for them to get here as it is to New Zealand.
DJ wise, I don't know. I mean, I could name millions.
I'm sure over the. I mean, this is what I love about Alderney is that like it's like everyone has their ability. Everyone can do their own thing here. Like if you want to start a music festival, we're actually here to support you. Like if you want to do this, we're here to support you.
Oh, I've walked around the island going, this would make, the eastern end of the island would make a great music festival.
Oh, it would.
Main stage in front of the lighthouse.
Wow.
Field. One of the stages would be in the moat around Fort Albert, I reckon. Obviously the quarry.
The campsite's going to be
campsite and soy for beach parties. Oh yeah, you could have a really good
and like a fleet of small boats from Guernsey, like Dunkirk.
Yeah, I mean, I discussed this at length with friends a few years back. Like, right, how could we do it? And we came to the conclusion that you'd need to moor a cruise liner off the coast to ferry people in.
That's not such a bad idea.
If you wanted a decent attendance,
that could work.
But you'd also have to you'd upset some people by closing off essentially one end of the island.
It's a tricky one as well, but listen, there's plenty of time to get involved in all this, and obviously I do hope that I mean I don't actually have any doubts that you'll make it to the end of your 4 years, which is ironic because I think it's a bit like Game of Thrones that the last year of seeing stakes members just dropping like flies. But I have a lot of confidence that you'll make it.
Yeah, well, it is exhausting for someone who's not retired to do it. It's but it's worth it. Like I actually genuinely feel like we're making a positive change, and
But then obviously once your job is done in the States. Your job for Alderney never ends, does it? I mean, that's the point.
I've got a few different business ideas. I'm contemplating.
We're making a music festival, man. You've just put the manifest out there. I'm like, okay, we're gonna make it happen. I'm 100% down for that. We also have to call in DJ Jag. Jag will definitely be good for that kind of stuff. And there's plenty of people.
Yeah.
Do you remember we had Slipmatt and Ramos
many years ago?
Party many years ago. Every time their music's on the telly at the moment, it's like some advert. And I said, hey, I'm like, oh my god. And then weirdly, I actually saw them years later at Tomorrowland. So I was working for JBL doing some
I've never been to that. It looks like quite a fun festival.
Do you know they recently had a big fire, didn't they? Yeah. So maybe
they did an amazing job of putting up a temporary sort of screen behind.
Did they really?
The festival still went ahead. Yeah.
Well, Slipmatt and Ramos were playing there. When I got on stage, my little VIP pass, I just pointed at them. I was like, I'm from Alderney, and they're like, best party we've ever played, mate.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, it is a great venue. Were they in the quarry? Or,
they were in the bunker. I think one of the bunker boys had a connect with them, and to be able to play a whole rave in a German bunker. What an amazing place. So if there are any artists out there that are looking for like some little getaway,
absolutely. Well, Herm seemed to be doing quite a good job at the Mermaid Tavern. Had Sasha play there last year.
Really?
Nick Warren and Dave Seaman are two progressive house DJs who I'm a big fan of. They're playing there in September. Might be going.
Oh, I think you should. I mean, it's about time we went and explored the rest of these channel islands, isn't it? I mean,
Herm's lovely.
I've never been to Herm, never been to Sark, done Jersey and Guernsey, but
you need to get Martin Brown on this podcast. He lived in Herm for 6 or 7 years, and he's got lots of interesting stories.
Wow. Well, maybe once I've done 2,000 people in Alderney, I'll just do all of the channel islands. How much would that be in total? So, like, there's 100,000 people on Jersey?
120, I think.
120.
And about 70 on Guernsey. Guernsey,
So that's like
68,000.
200,000 plus Alderney.
Might take you a while.
Might take me a while. Okay.
I don't know what her SARC is, but maybe 700 or 800.
No, that's pretty easy. Maybe the smallest islands would do. Let me just just like lastly, so I want to talk a little bit about some of the reasons why you love living on Alderney, like all politics and work aside.
Yeah.
You've got a really close group of friends over here.
Yeah.
What does a typical sort of off day look like for you?
My off day is only Saturdays these days. It normally involves being quite hungover because I try to go out to the pub every Friday
because you have
night.
your clinics, right? So you meet with the people of Alderney in the pub Friday 5 p.m.
Yeah, when I got elected, I had a couple of people say to me, Stu, are you going to have a surgery, a political surgery, a weekly surgery? And I was like, I don't want to commit to. I tell you what, I will be at the Georgian for happy hour at 5 p.m. every Friday, and I've stuck to that. I mean, there's a couple I've been down at the moorings instead, but if there's live music on, I'll go to that instead.
How has that worked? Have you had people dropping in? And
not really. No, it's talk to the same people every week.
Yeah. But, I think we need to advertise this a bit more. Guys, 5 p.m. Fridays.
Once I've had a pint, I'll talk politics all night, and as long as people are nice and polite, and I've not really encountered any hostility. I think. People are generally appreciative. We've walked into a bit of a mess, and we're trying hard to sort it out. So
you're doing a great job, my friend. Tell me about the golf course, because I know that you play a little bit of golf.
I used to when I was younger. I played a lot when I was a teenager. Got down to 11, but then I was since I was 20, I've probably averaged one round a year since then. So the golf course is amazing. I mean, it's so picturesque. It's looking a little bit burnt to a crisp at the moment, like everywhere on the island, because we haven't had any rain in months. But I don't think there's many golf courses with views like Alderney's.
Makes sense. Do you swim at all? Do you like to go in the sea?
Not intentionally.
Do you know what? It's so funny, isn't it? The amount of people who live on the island.
I'm ginger. I don't even go to the beach in the summer. The only time I go to the beach is when the dogs can go there and I walk my dog on it.
Interesting.
I mean, I'll go to the beach if someone's having a party and some drinks, but sitting on a beach doesn't interest me. I've got a lovely garden.
Spoiled, man. We've got these amazing golden beaches.
And they are beautiful in September when I can take the dog there.
Yeah,
I love walking the beaches. Walking along, parking on the other side of parking at the bottom of Fort Tower, but walking up and over the fort. Walking along Soy, walking along Arch, walking along Corblets, looping around past the lighthouse and back over along the railway line. One of my favourite walks. And the walks on Alderney are epic. Like the southern cliffs, I walk regularly with my dogs. The Wildlife Trust do a great job of clearing the paths, and it's my favourite thing. Lots and lots. It's only a small place, but there's a huge variety of different walks, and the dog loves it. Chasing rabbits.
Tax loves it.
Yeah.
Tax is the name of your dog, by the way.
I didn't name the dog Tax, by the way.
I love that. I said that earlier. I thought maybe people were thinking I'm talking about taxes.
Yeah, she took her on. She's about 12 or 13 now, and I took her on 5 years ago.
The old girl.
Dog.
Oh, bless. Well, she's loving
Still
it.
a child at heart.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is such a lovely island for dogs.
It is. It's great.
It really is. Okay, is there anything else you want to talk about? I mean, I'm very happy to do another one of these as well.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just update in the future or something like that.
I mean, I could spin a million stories from my military career, but we've probably done enough of that.
Well, I mean, not really. I mean, there is plenty more to discuss, but I mean, Alderney is an interesting place because it does attract a lot of veterans. I think over the years we've had an awful lot of people from the forces.
Well, so I heard that post-war, quite a lot of people who obviously a lot of locals came back, and then lots of people who settled here. Were from all the various parts of the British Empire and colonies, and all. Alderney attracted quite an eclectic bunch, and it still does. When you start chatting to people in the pub, there's a lot of people with some fascinating history that you would never guess when you walk past them in the street.
It's crazy, isn't it?
And there's some interesting characters over the years. Colonel Waters was probably up there as biggest character.
Yeah, so explain to me Colonel Waters, because he's one of Alderney's sadly passed away legends.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I'm probably not. He was in the SAS, and he ended up out in Oman running his own private army. But he retired here.
He also was a States member, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
was it? I mean, I've heard that there was a generation of states members that were basically all like
All ex-military. Yeah.
ex-military. You know.
Well, that generation, there would have been a generation of them. Yeah.
Yeah, all old war people. Maybe with your military career, maybe we can get a bit of discipline in the States. Maybe we
I
could,
don't think there's some. It's not too undisciplined at the moment.
I don't think so. No. I think we have
Uh,
the most eclectic group we've
Yeah,
ever
we've
had.
got. I mean, actually, the military is slowly creeping in. We've got James Robinson in the civil service, head of
I love
operations. He's ex-colonel of the Gurkhas. Fantastic. He is. He's really great to work with because he just like gets stuff done.
Yeah.
What's his name? Chris McGregor. He's just taken over as the
AEL.
boss of AEL, and he's ex KRH, King's Royal Hussars. So another ex-military guy.
Wow, Alderney is. Well, hey, we're looking for them.
I mean, it's
Come to the island. We need people who are competent.
It's a great place for ex-military
hardworking
people to.
Yeah, and I think I
escape
love
the
that
war.
as well. Like, you know, like I love British culture. I
Mm.
do. I'm sorry if people don't like hearing me say that, but
Why would
it's
someone
just,
not like you saying that? I mean,
I don't
love
know,
British
Stuart.
culture.
Maybe like in the
I
last
was-
decade, I
yeah.
felt guilty about being a white male.
I was
and
very
just-
lucky to grow up in the 90s and 2000s where it was the best country in the world. And yeah,
Is it not
it's-
still?
The UK isn't. No, it's not a free country anymore. I don't think.
What is it about free speech that people are so terrified of?
Offending people. I mean, the problem is who decides what is acceptable and who decides what isn't. And inevitably you end up with politicians going, you can't say that, you can't say that. And they end up censoring stuff that that they shouldn't be censoring. And the online bill, what's it, the online speech bill that came through a couple of days ago, you know, it's designed supposedly to stop children accessing websites that they shouldn't. That's a fair reason or fair sort of objective, but they're already using it to censor loads of other stuff. And it's like, you know, did you see Keir Starmer and Donald Trump the other day? I mean, Donald Trump just tore Keir Starmer apart about free speech, and Keir was like, "No, we've had free speech for a long time," and no, I mean, like, you
It is
can't
ridiculous, isn't
pretend that the UK is a free country anymore.
Mm.
You can't pretend that the police are policing without fear or favour. I'm actually really sad for the UK, and I'm very fearful for its future. I really am. When I was at Sandhurst, we used to get lectured by war studies professors from King's, and it's the best war studies department in the world. And yeah, there's a professor called David Betts who has put out a couple of essays about analysing academically how the UK is sort of what percentage chance there is of civil strife and civil war in the coming years. And it's, you know, it's well worth reading his essays. They put he's studied the causes of civil discontent and civil uprisings and stuff for you know, in detail, and he's saying, like, actually the UK is not looking very rosy at the moment, much of Europe as well. So yeah, I don't want to go too much into it, but I'm very happy that I'm in Alderney, and just hopefully going to be a refuge for that. I'm determined to fight for us to maintain free speech here and not adopt these quite draconian, quite censorious rules and regulations that the UK is adopting. It was one of the main things on my manifesto, and I will fight loudly for us to keep our freedoms here.
I really appreciate that. Well, listen, Stuart Clark, thank you very much for coming and talking to me today, and hope to see you again soon.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Cameron.